The Black Seminole Scouts emerged from a complex journey that began in the swamps of Florida and eventually led them to the frontier regions of Texas and Mexico, where they became an essential component of the Buffalo Soldiers. Originating from a blend of freed or escaped enslaved peoples and Seminole natives, their history reflects the tumultuous dynamics of the Antebellum South and the challenges faced by marginalized groups seeking freedom and autonomy. In the 1700s, freed individuals from Georgia and South Carolina sought sanctuary in Spanish-held Florida, where they were granted freedom by the authorities. Among these individuals were Black Seminoles, who found refuge among the Seminole peoples, forming a unique community that blended African culture with Seminole customs. Living in separate villages, they integrated into Seminole life, occasionally intermarrying and participating as equals in battles alongside the Seminoles. With the onset of Native American removal before the Civil War, both Seminole natives and Black Seminoles were relocated to Indian Territory, present-day Oklahoma. Enduring hardships akin to other native peoples, they remained vulnerable to kidnapping and re-enslavement. However, discontent with the oppressive conditions in Indian Territory led to a pivotal decision among the Black Seminoles. In 1842, following the Seminole chiefs' reluctant agreement to move to a reservation in the Indian Territory, the Black Seminoles embarked on a journey to Coahuila, Mexico, seeking refuge from the specter of enslavement. There, they were welcomed among the Mexicans and were later joined by Native Seminoles, Black Creeks, and Black Cherokees, forming a diverse and resilient community in their quest for freedom. Led by figures such as John Horse, also known as Gopher John, or Juan Caballo, who served as a chief of the Black Seminoles, they demonstrated their prowess as skilled soldiers during the Seminole Wars, achieving victories against U.S. Army forces. Dissatisfied with their circumstances in Indian Territory, John Horse and Seminole Chief Wildcat embarked on a daring journey south into Mexico. Their 700-mile trek through Texas, culminating in crossing the Rio Grande on the eastern branch of the Great Comanche War Trail, brought them to the Las Marras Spring in central Kinney County, Texas, where they would establish a presence at the future site of Fort Clark in early July 1850. Upon their arrival in Mexico, the Black Seminole Scouts were met with open arms by the Mexican government, which recognized their military prowess and welcomed their assistance in combating raids by the Apache and Comanche warriors. These seasoned fighters proved invaluable in repelling bandits and slave raiders who sought to seize Mexican territory to establish a pro-slavery state. Among the group were young boys who would later mature into the original scouts of the detachment, honing their skills and bravery through years of service. Their dedication and courage were instrumental in safeguarding Mexico's northern territories from hostile native incursions. However, despite their significant contributions and the bonds forged with the Mexican people, the Black Seminoles retained a deep longing for their ancestral homeland. After a generation of loyal military service to the Mexican government, the Black Seminoles harbored a fervent desire to reunite with the Seminole Nation in Oklahoma, where they could once again reconnect with their cultural roots and heritage. After 2 decades in Mexico, the Black Seminoles sought to reclaim their land rights and return to the United States, inspired by promises made in original treaties during the era of Native American removal. Major Zenas R. Bliss of the 25th Infantry, recognizing their potential as scouts, encouraged their emigration back to the United States. Arriving at Fort Duncan, Texas on July 4, 1870, the first group, led by John Kibitz, offered their services as scouts, marking the inception of the Black Seminole Scouts. Initially numbering 11 men and their families, including Kibitz, who was appointed sergeant, they signed up for a 6-month enlistment, hoping to secure a place in the frontier's defense. Surprising many with their ethnicity, as they were thought to resemble the Seminole people of Oklahoma, the Scouts swiftly adapted to their new surroundings. Major Bliss commended their skills as hunters, trackers, and fearless fighters, gladly providing them shelter in exchange for their invaluable services on the frontier. As more Black Seminoles immigrated from Mexico throughout the 1870s, settling primarily at Fort Duncan and later Fort Clark in Texas, the ranks of the Black Seminole Scouts swelled. Despite promises of land, provisions, and reimbursement for travel costs made in agreements lost to history, the Black Seminoles found themselves subjected to the authority of white officers, typically junior second lieutenants or post adjutants during garrison duty. Under the command of Lieutenant John L. Bullis, a Quaker and Civil War veteran known for his reliability and trustworthiness, the Scouts flourished. Bullis, revered by his men and entrusted with performing marriages within the tribe, led the Scouts into engagements with hostile Native American tribes, including Comanches, Kiowas, Apaches, and Kickapoos. From May 1872 to 1881, the Scouts undertook numerous operations, sometimes crossing into Mexico, the Indian Territory, and Kansas in pursuit of raiding parties. Remarkably, despite their perilous missions, not a single scout among no more than 50 enlisted men at any given time suffered serious injury or loss of life. Collaborating closely with cavalry regiments stationed at Fort Clark and operating independently when necessary, the Scouts played a pivotal role in bringing an end to the Indian Wars in Texas. Fort Clark, under the leadership of Colonel Ronald S. Mackenzie, served as a strategic hub for expeditions into Mexico to counter raiding incursions, solidifying the Scouts' legacy as indispensable defenders of the frontier. In the summer of 1872, Lieutenant John L. Bullis assumed command of the Scout detachment at Fort Duncan, marking the beginning of a chapter of legendary exploits for the Black Seminole Scouts. As Bullis took the reins, the detachment and their families found themselves divided between Fort Duncan and Fort Clark, becoming integral to frontier defense under his leadership. Their prowess as Scouts came to the forefront when the aforementioned Mackenzie, following secret talks with the Secretary of War William W. Belknap and General Philip Sheridan, led a punitive expedition into Coahuila, Mexico. On May 17, 1873, accompanied by the Black Seminole Scouts and a detachment of 4th Cavalry, Mackenzie crossed the border, embarking on a daring mission against Kickapoo raiders. In a successful skirmish at El Remolino, the Scouts' expert guidance proved crucial, forcing the Mexican army to refrain from intervening. With their mission accomplished, Mackenzie and his forces hastily returned to Fort Clark, their valor in battle solidifying their reputation as formidable defenders. Subsequent raids into Mexico saw the Black Seminole Scouts continue to distinguish themselves under the leadership of Colonel William R. Pecos Bill Shafter and Captain Samuel B. M. Young of the 8th Cavalry later into the 1870s. Their exploits in the Lower Pecos and Big Bend region became the stuff of legend, immortalizing the bravery and heroism of the Scouts. In 1875, 3 remarkable Scouts from the Buffalo Soldiers of the 24th Infantry earned the prestigious Medal of Honor for their extraordinary valor and unwavering commitment during a critical skirmish. John Ward, Isaac Payne, and Pompey Factor, while serving under the command of Lieutenant Bullis, displayed remarkable bravery and trustworthiness in the face of danger. The skirmish unfolded on April 25th, following a raid by Comanches on a stagecoach and the subsequent theft of horses on April 5th. Lieutenant Bullis, accompanied by the Scouts, embarked on a mission to locate the elusive Comanches along the lower Pecos River. As they stumbled upon the Comanche camp, the Scouts, demonstrating strategic acumen, dismounted and positioned themselves strategically behind rocks, creating the illusion of a larger force. A fierce battle ensued as the Scouts engaged the Comanches with unparalleled courage. In the heat of combat, they managed to seize the enemy's horses twice, resulting in the death of 3 Comanche warriors and the wounding of a 4th. However, outnumbered by roughly 30 Comanches, the Scouts faced imminent danger as the enemy attempted to surround them, threatening to cut off their access to their own horses. Undeterred by the perilous circumstances, the Scouts, with characteristic determination, fought their way back to the horses, braving heavy enemy fire. Yet, amidst the chaos of battle, they realized that Lieutenant Bullis had been inadvertently left behind. Without hesitation, and despite the raging conflict, the Scouts selflessly returned to the fray, risking their lives once more to rescue their valiant commander. Their actions exemplified the highest standards of bravery, camaraderie, and loyalty under fire, earning them the admiration and respect of their fellow soldiers. In May 1876, Chief John Horse suffered severe wounds, and Scout Titus Payne met his untimely demise in a tragic shooting incident near Eagle Pass. The perpetrators of this violence remained elusive, with suspicion falling upon former outlaw turned sheriff John King Fisher. Renowned for his past as a horse thief and cattle rustler, Fisher harbored a deep-seated animosity towards the Scouts. By 1876, he wielded considerable power and influence over Kinney County, rendering him seemingly untouchable. The shooting sent shockwaves through the Black Seminole community, sparking outbreaks of brawling and rioting in its aftermath. In the ensuing months, further turmoil ensued as accusations of horse theft rocked the region. John Ward's brother, Scott, faced allegations of stealing 5 horses, while Isaac Payne and Dallas Griner were accused of similar crimes. Evading arrest, Payne and Griner sought refuge in Nacimiento, Mexico, only to make the fatal error of returning to Brackettville to celebrate the new year. Sheriff Lorenzo C. Crowell, armed with knowledge of their presence, orchestrated a covert plan to apprehend the fugitives. Under the cloak of darkness, on December 31st, Crowell, Deputy Sheriff Windus, and their accomplices positioned themselves around the Seminole camp, awaiting the opportune moment to strike. In a fateful encounter, violence erupted as Adam Payne and Scout Frank Enoch were shot, with Payne meeting a fiery demise at close range. Amidst the chaos, Bobby Kibbitt valiantly defended his comrades, while Payne and Griner managed to evade capture, fleeing back to Mexico. The aftermath of this confrontation saw a trial and subsequent acquittal for Kibbitt, with charges against Payne and Griner dropped. Despite these trials and tribulations, the Black Seminole Scouts remained stalwart defenders of the frontier. In 1878, under the command of the aforementioned Colonel Mackenzie, they participated in an expedition against the Kickapoo, marking a significant chapter in the Texas Indian Wars. While the conflict waned in the ensuing years, the Scouts continued to uphold their legacy of bravery and valor. As the 1880s unfolded, the Black Seminole Scouts detachment found themselves immersed in continuous deployment to the rugged expanses of the Big Bend region of Texas. Tasked with safeguarding settlers from native raids and fending off bandits from Mexico, the Scouts became the backbone of the Army's border patrol efforts. Operating from a series of remote camps west of the Pecos River, they traversed the immensely vast and desolate terrain, becoming intimately acquainted with every trail, waterhole, and hiding place. Their field prowess was unmatched, with the Scouts demonstrating stoicism and resilience even in the harshest of conditions. Lieutenant Francis H. French of the 19th Infantry remarked on their unwavering resolve, noting their penchant for laughter and camaraderie amidst the biting cold, a stark contrast to the complaints of their white counterparts. However, as the specter of hostile troubles waned in the early 1890s, the Scouts found themselves transitioning from the rigors of frontier patrol to mundane garrison duties. With posts such as Fort Stockton and Fort Davis closing their doors, the Scouts were transferred to Fort Ringgold, some 285 miles southeast on the Rio Grande, away from their families at Fort Clark. On February 23, 1893, they engaged in a final skirmish against Mexican bandits at Las Muillas Ranch, 30 miles north of Fort Ringgold in Starr County, bringing an end to an era of frontier warfare. The dawn of the new century ushered in a period of decline for the Black Seminole Scouts. Field service became sporadic, and the men were relegated to menial tasks, a far cry from their former roles as elite trackers and warriors. Despite their storied legacy and decades of service, the detachment struggled to justify its existence. And with the end of the Indian Wars and shifting priorities, the Army disbanded the detachment on September 30th, 1914. The remaining scouts were discharged, forced to vacate the Fort Clark Reservation along with their families. Only 27 Black Seminoles were permitted to remain at the fort, with their tenure contingent upon the passing of the elder members of the group. Despite the dissolution of their unit, the resilience of the Seminole people endured. Many found employment with the Quartermaster Department at Fort Clark, while others established roots in Brackettville, where retired scouts had already forged a community. The last surviving scout, Curly Jefferson, passed away in 1959. The enduring legacy of the Black Seminole Scouts resonates through the ages, leaving an indelible mark on the landscape of southern Texas and northern Mexico. Many of these brave scouts find their final resting place at the Black Seminole Scouts Cemetery in Kinney County, Texas. Among the honored are recipients of the Medal of Honor, including John Ward, Pompey Factor, Adam Payne, and Isaac Payne, alongside members of their families. Today, descendants of the Black Seminole Scouts continue to thrive in communities such as Brackettville and Del Rio, Texas, and in northern Mexico. Each September, the Seminole community of Brackettville gathers to honor the memory of their scout ancestors, with their cemetery serving as a solemn centerpiece of remembrance. Here, beneath the shade of a lone twisted oak, lie the resting places of the 4 aforementioned Medal of Honor recipients, alongside their stalwart first sergeants, John Shields and Ben July. Rows of uneven headstones stand as a testament to the sacrifices made under the scorching Texas sun. During a poignant moment in the spring of 1907, Lieutenant Colonel Francis H. French, who had once commanded the Black Seminole Scouts detachment, returned to Fort Clark after 2 decades. As he passed by the Seminole camp, he pondered, "I wonder if any of my old warriors are there now." Today, the response is inevitable. Yes, the spirits of these valiant warriors endure, their legacy forever woven into the fabric of the land they once called home, leaving an indelible mark on the history of the Old West.